So we're leading up to one of the most important times of the year for the Christian calendar. So it's a brand new series, Reasons for the Season. It's taken by our very own Mark Pomeroy. Buckle up, it's an awesome message.
Well, hey there, Elevate friends and family. Great to have you with us today. Now, when I'm filming this, like today, right now, it's the 1st of December. Chances are you're joining us the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, sometime later. But anyway, either way, it's officially December. Question, has anybody put their Christmas tree up? Yeah? Anybody hasn't put their Christmas tree up? Anybody have hard rules about when you should or shouldn't put your Christmas tree up? Anybody finished their Christmas shopping? Good, well played. Anybody hasn't even started their Christmas shopping? Look, it's December, so chances are wherever you are in the world joining us here, there's Christmas decorations going up somewhere around you in a shopping center or a street or in your local neighborhood. Mariah Carey's making her usual December All I Want for Christmas Is You rounds on the radio stations. And then there's another couple of usual suspects that Christians like to kind of lean into and advocate. And these are keep Christ in Christmas, which is great. Yeah, I agree. And the other one is that Jesus is the reason for the season. And you're going to see these on bumper stickers and social media posts and I don't know. Even some people in their homes would have these things on display. And that's okay. I'm not here to pick a fight. But I do want to float an idea your way that maybe Jesus isn't the reason for the season. Now, don't stop. Let me explain. Okay, maybe Jesus isn't the reason for the season, or at least maybe thinking Jesus is the reason for the season is only one side of the coin. So what I want to do today and over the next 2 weeks is actually kind of look at Christmas from the perspective of the other side of the coin. And here's why. If everything had been perfect on earth, then there would have been no reason for Jesus to have abandoned heaven. He could have just stayed there. Everything's perfect in heaven. Everything's perfect on earth. Let's just keep it that way. You know, if we weren't such a mess, we wouldn't have needed God to send his son into the world to save us. You know, it's just simple math, people. No mess requires no rescue. So if this idea that messy people are the reason for the season, which by the way includes you and me, if this is new to you and you're like, actually, Mark, very, very, very good perspective. Thank you. I'd never considered that before. And you want to start to run with it, just listen very carefully to these two PSAs. Firstly, because we're talking about messy people being the reason for the season, don't go walking up to your boss or your messy colleague or your mother-in-law and tell them that they're the reason for the season because they're so messed up. Nor would I recommend you get the t-shirt or the sticker or the social media post and start posting, oh, guess what, everyone? I'm the reason for the season, because that messaging's just going to get lost in translation. Trust me. But we all fall into the category of messy people because of things that we've done, because of things that we've said. They all pointed to the reality that we needed rescuing. When I was in my early 20s, I worked as a head trainer, like a sort of fitness advisor, sports medicine practitioner for a semi-professional Australian rules football club here in Perth. And I remember just being out in the wild one day, like on a weekend, just out with friends, enjoying the day. And I bumped into the coach and his wife, and they'd had their first baby about a year prior to this particular rendezvous. And I said to the wife, "Oh, look at you. Fantastic, you're pregnant again. Congratulations." And she stared back to me very coldly and said, "No, actually, I'm not." Yeah, that really happened. And there was absolutely no way that I could put that toothpaste back in the tube. And to make things worse is that the coach was also a player. He was like a captain coach. And so the wife and their 1-year-old child would come to the games every single week. And every single week I would see her. And every single week I would be visually reminded of the crime that I committed, and I could not walk it back. Now, before you get a little judgy on me, let's just face it. Chances are you've done something or said something dumb that you regret. Maybe you have had or have trouble controlling your temper, and so you've lit up at somebody in your sphere and said some words that you could never take back. You know, maybe you've found yourself caught up in some destructive behavior and you've said to yourself, I won't. I did. Or maybe just you're now at a place where you're buried in disappointment because as you look back at the hopes and dreams you had for your life, and then you look around at your current reality, things haven't turned out as well as you'd hoped they would. And the real pinch point isn't just that things in our past happened, it's that things that happened in our past can hold us back in our present, because the reality is, and you know this, the reality is that things that happen in our past don't always stay in our past. They tend to accompany us on our journey, and the reminders typically continue to haunt us and ultimately hold us back. Now, I want you, if you've got your smartphone camera, to scan this flow code. It's going to take you into the Bible app, and it's going to take you to Luke chapter 22. Now, Luke was a medical doctor. He wasn't part of Jesus' first contingent of handpicked followers. In fact, he went around like an investigator after Jesus had died and rose again, interviewing eyewitnesses and just trying to get an account of this incredible journey and story of Jesus' life and ministry. One of the characters, one of the people that pops up in Luke's account is a guy named Peter. And Peter, first of all, he was one of Jesus' handpicked 12 disciples. He was probably his most overtly passionate and outspoken, but unfortunately, Peter had the habit of doing and saying some dumb stuff on occasion, getting a little bit over his skis, if you like. And it came to a head when he did something that when you read it, it's like, it literally seems inconceivable. See, what had happened was Jesus, on the night that he knew he was going to be betrayed, knew he was going to be arrested, knew he was going to be put to trial that would ultimately lead to his death, he gathered his 12 handpicked followers and had a meal with them. And during that meal, he both pointed out that one of those 12 would betray him, and he pointed out that another of those 12 would deny him. Now, Peter heard these words and he said, Jesus, there is simply like no way that I would ever deny you. Even if all of these other 11 deny you, I never will. In fact, Peter said, so much so, Jesus, I would sooner face death than deny you. Well, after that meal, arresting Jesus, they marched him off and took him into the house of the chief priest. Peter followed, but at a safe distance. Now, in the middle of the courtyard, some people had started a fire and were sitting around it trying to keep warm, and one of the serving maids sitting at the fire noticed Peter. then took a second look and said, hey, this man was with him. Well, Peter denied it. Woman, I don't even know him. Short time later, someone else noticed Peter and said, no, you're one of them. But Peter denied it. Man, I am not. Then about an hour later, someone else spoke up, really adamant. He's got to have been with him. He's got Galilean written all over him. And Peter said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Peter, this is not good. Now, I grew up in church, and so I was familiar with this account in history that Peter denied Jesus 3 times, even though he said he never would. But it's only recently that the very next thing that happened jumped off the pages of history and punched me in the face. This is what Luke then accounts happened. Just then, after Peter had, from a safe distance, denied Jesus 3 times, just like Jesus said he would, the master turned and looked at Peter. Now, if you're brave enough, would you just take a minute to imagine in that moment that you're Peter? What might you be feeling when Jesus is looking at you in the eye? The Jesus that you followed for 3 years, gave up everything. The Jesus who was about to be willingly put to death to rescue people, including you, Peter. You know, would you be feeling guilt? Like, oh, I can't believe I just did that. Would you be feeling shame? Like, I really hope the others don't find out about this. Would you be feeling regret? Like, I wish I could take it back. This kind of scenario could be very real for all of us. You know, a loved one that you let down and you wish you could take it back. Somebody at work you threw under the bus because everyone else was kind of piling on them. And you did it for sort of your own game to make yourself look better in the eyes of your colleagues. Maybe it's a fellow student that was getting picked on and you could have and probably should have stood up for them, but you chose to walk away. Or even something maybe way, way worse. When these things happen, and again, I made the point earlier that our past doesn't always stay in our past. Maybe when these things happen, it's led you to question whether God could ever forgive you, whether God could ever love you, and whether God could ever use you. Here's the good news, and here's something that Christmas, God sending his Son into the world to rescue us, highlights that while we can't change our past, God can change our future. In fact, not only can God change our future, he is so interested in and committed to changing our future that he made the first move while we still needed rescuing. While we might not have even been asking to be rescued, he made the first move. And by doing that, he gives us the power to close the door to our past. This is phase 1 of us actually leaving the past in the past, of us actually closing the door and not having the past, the memories, the pain, the regret, the shame, the guilt holding us back from our future. Because if we don't let go of the past, we can't take hold of the future God has for us. Now, if you're not believing, if you're not convinced, surely we can sort of step into the future even though we've kind of got this stuff exposed and blowing in like a cold wind from the past. Try this. I'm assuming you live in some sort of enclosed structure. When we've done here, go to the rear door of your residence and hold on to the door handle of that rear door. Now, don't let go of that. And then try to open the front door of your residence, the door to your future. You cannot do them both simultaneously. Now, here's the even better news. Not only does God not want us to stay holding on to our past, He sent Jesus. Jesus came to us and comes to us at the time when we need Him most to rescue us and make it possible for that door to be shut and for us to open the door into our future, the future that God has for us, to be able to step into the future that God has for us. So let's go back to Peter. Now here's Peter. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Jesus looked at him. We've tried to imagine some of what Peter might have been feeling in that moment. Jesus ultimately got killed. Jesus ultimately got buried. Jesus ultimately rose from the dead. And He started appearing to His followers. Well, several days after Jesus had risen from the dead, He appeared to Peter and several of the other disciples. These were the disciples that, when Jesus first handpicked them, their profession was fishermen. And they were so discouraged and disappointed in the events around Jesus' arrest and death that they'd just gone back to fishing. You know, like disappointed that Jesus seemingly turned out not to be who He claimed to be. That the 3 years that they'd spent following Him and being groomed for ministry and world impact was a waste of time. And so they went back to fishing. Well, Jesus appeared to them on a beach after a night of fishing. Now, originally, initially they didn't recognize Him because, why would they? The guy's meant to be dead. But Jesus had some bread and He cooked some of the fish that they caught. And when He broke the bread and started to pass that around, and when He took the fish and started to pass that around, it was a very familiar scene for them. And they then, in that moment, recognized Him. But this was the first time Peter had been with Jesus face to face since Jesus, several days prior, had looked him in the eye after Peter had denied even knowing Jesus 3 times. This is the definition of awkward people. And Jesus looked at Peter and said to him, "Simon, son of John." Didn't even call him Peter. Hold that thought for a second. See, Peter was the new name that Jesus gave him. It meant rock, steadfast, sturdy, immovable. And yet Peter had been anything but steadfast and immovable on the night of Jesus' arrest. And I sort of wonder, I'm just like playing some mind games here, but I wonder if this is kind of like when your mom used to call you by your full name. And when she did, you knew you were in trouble. I don't know. Luke, it's not clear, but either way, the fact that the first person that Jesus singled out in that small group of disciples who'd gone back to fishing, the first person Jesus singled out was Peter. And so I also wonder if Peter's like, oh, okay, here it comes. I mean, I'm guilty of the crime. I'm about to get the punishment that I deserve. Instead, this is what Jesus said to Simon Peter. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" It was sort of like, you used to love me, and then there was an obvious break in the relationship. And I'm not going to cover over it. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to blow past it. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. It's in your past, but it's come with you into your present. Because the past doesn't always stay in the past. Well, Peter said, yes, Master, you know I love you. Which is like, well, you didn't seem to do that the night I was arrested, but all right. Jesus said, shepherd my sheep. And this happened a second time, and this happened a third time. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Well, Peter was upset that Jesus asked for the third time, do you love me? So he answered, okay, Master, you know everything there is to know. You've got to know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. John makes the point that Peter was upset. But here's the reality. Jesus could have ignored the past, just jumped straight to today, like forgiven, I forgive you, which he did forgive him. But there was some healing that needed to happen. There was we've got to actually go back into your past, and we've got to do some deep healing. And Jesus was more interested in Peter's long-term healing than his short-term feelings. I know exactly how this plays out. A number of years ago, I was competing in a triathlon in the southwest of Western Australia, and there was a part of the bicycle section that was pretty steep, and I went down that, and I actually had a cracked frame in my bike. I didn't know it at the time. I got flung off my bike, and I just sort of slid on my back down this pretty coarse country road here in Western Australia. It wasn't pretty. I had to get scooped up by the ambulance and taken to the emergency department of the nearby hospital. And, it was a mess, okay? I want to keep this thing PG, but let me try. It was a mess. It was a combination of, it was everything. But I had some gunk in there, stones and dirt and gravel and stuff that I'd picked up along my sliding as I crashed off my bike. Well, before the nurse could dress my wounds, she had to first clean my wounds. And not just like brush a little bit of the surface level debris off. She had to get in there and do some deep cleaning. And at no point while she was doing the deep cleaning did she ask me, Mark, does it hurt? That was just assumed. It hurt like crazy, trust me. But she just got in there and she did what she needed to do, even though it was excruciatingly painful for me. And that's because this nurse was more interested in my long-term healing than my short-term feelings. So when Jesus brings up the past, when Jesus highlights the past, it's not because he's trying to shame us. It's because he wants to do a deep work of healing so that our past doesn't continue to follow us around, doesn't continue to prevent us from being able to open and step into the future that God has for us. There's even more, and this is the remarkable thing. Jesus didn't just want to heal Peter and forgive him and kind of restore him to the present. Jesus actually wanted to reestablish and reset and reboot Peter into the very purpose that Jesus handpicked him for and trained him for in the very beginning, to open the door into Peter's future, the purpose that Peter himself had thought he'd blown and was disqualified from. And so Christmas is a reminder that God wants to close the door to your messy past and open the door to a purposeful future. That when we encounter Jesus, we're not just saved for us. That when we say yes to following Jesus, it's a to be continued story. And that's exactly what we're going to do over the next 2 weeks. We're going to continue this story, reasons for the season. Now, I want to encourage you and invite you to come on this journey with us. Be here next week and the following week as we lead up to Christmas. Bring people, have a watch party, put some, I don't know, what's your thing, fruit mince pies out, whatever it is. And let's go on the journey. Another thing you can do to go on the journey is to scan this QR code. It's going to take you to the same Bible app that we mentioned earlier. And it's going to allow you to set Elevate Church as your church. And every Monday, the beginning of the new week, we put up a Bible plan, a featured Bible plan around the topic that we've taught. So we're about to put that up. And hey, how about you join us each week and working through those Bible plans in your own time during the week and just see God do more. Take a deeper dive as we continue this journey together. All right, see you next week.